This is dead. I don't mean that it's stopped working. This is my Odin 3 Ultra, and this model is no longer available. In fact, it hasn't been available to order since back in February. But something even worse than that happened today for those people who thought that they just got in before the cut-off window. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different from the videos that I usually put out, which are filled with jokes and humour and some incredible cinematic B-roll, if I do say so myself. I mean, I do say so myself. But there's going to be no cutaways to nice pictures here. It's just me talking, and you'll see exactly how many times I mess up by the amount of edits I'm going to have to put in the video. I tell you what we'll do, just for fun, let's count them. But by the end of this video, you're going to know what's happening with this whole AYN situation, whether their compensation is mathematically insulting, which I think is much worse than being sociologically insulting or even geographically insulting, and of course, what you should be doing if you're staring at one of these emails right now. We'll jump into what's happening very quickly because I'm sure you've seen it somewhere around today. In what was, for me, the early hours of the morning, somebody posted on Reddit that they'd received an email from AYN saying that they could no longer fulfill their order for the AYN Odin 3 Ultra. They had two options. They could cancel the order and get a $20 coupon as an apology, or they could go ahead with an order for a 16GB max model, but also get $20 off that order. Now, I've seen somebody's email where they've said that you will also get the 16GB max model with UFS 4.0, although I'm not entirely sure how they're going to swing that if they've got a problem getting that component in the first place, and I couldn't independently confirm that bit of information. As you can imagine, some people are very upset about this. I mean, one group of people seems to have built a giant wicker effigy of an Odin 3, and they're putting people in there who are trying to defend AYN and setting fire to it. And the other people who are briskly running away in the other direction are talking about how all of this is really the fault of AI, and that really they should have built a giant effigy of Sam Altman. And Sam Altman himself seems to like the idea of having some sort of giant effigy as long as nobody sets fire to it. But the basic conversation is, has AYN been fair in the way that they've dealt with this? And I'm going to say up front, I think actually they're in a very difficult situation and they've done something that was a necessity. I don't think that AYN wanted to do this, but it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be a lot of people who, even though they've got what's essentially a fair deal, will still feel like they've been let down. And the gap between those two things is actually the story here. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the situation as it is and asking the same question that The Clash did all those years ago. Should I stay or should I go? This isn't an edit. This is just where I have the titles. This isn't going to count, okay? Just... Believe it or not, I actually have an idea of what this would have felt like this morning, opening up an email to read that you weren't going to get the thing that you've ordered, because I had a very similar situation over Christmas. My Odin 3 Ultra was caught up with that first batch of units that got delayed. And the email that we got was, well, you can either hang on for an indefinite amount of time, turned out to be a month or so, or you can cancel and you can get one of the 16GB models sent straight away. And let me be totally clear. I didn't want an Odin 3 Ultra more than until that moment somebody told me I couldn't have one. This isn't just fear of missing out. This is actually missing out. And there's a specific punch to the gut that you get when you read an email that says that they can't fulfill an order you'd considered closed 4 months ago. Pre-orders have always kind of operated on this pretend trust. You pretend you've bought a thing, the company pretends they're going to deliver it, and then somewhere down the line, one of you has to drop the act first. But AYN actually have a pretty good reputation, and it's been very hard earned. Those people who remember the COVID days will remember that the Odin 1 had massive shipping problems because companies weren't allowed to ship from China. And yet at that time, AYN worked their proverbial arses off in order to get units to customers. So to have a company like that, even though they're a small company, respond with actually, we can't do this, I'm afraid, it feels a little bit more real, bit more prescient than if it was AYN, for example, who you kind of expect might do this sort of thing. I think at some level we all thought that this could happen, but there's nothing more annoying than being right about something that you wished you were wrong about in the first place. Nevertheless, it leaves people with this question. Do I take the swap or do I walk? That's going to be very dependent on how you feel about this whole process, because the argument that everybody is having internally at the moment is, has AYN screwed me over? Now, that's not unfair to think that, especially if you're upset at the moment. But what we need to do is look at this honestly, because I think the truth is this is a situation that nobody actually wanted. I think from a monetary standpoint, AYN have actually done the right thing. There is a term in law, if you sue somebody, you're suing them because you want that person to make you whole. And I think that the offer that AYN have put on the table does in fact make you whole. It's been 3 or 4 months at this point. You couldn't have taken that money that you've paid to AYN and put it in a bank or a building society and get the same return back. I mean, we're all aware of the startling jump in memory prices at the moment, the lack of availability for people wanting those components. What AYN have done here is choose the least bad option for the greatest number of people. By every measurable financial access, this is fair. But at the same time, people didn't pre-order the Ultra because they wanted $500 of value in return. They pre-ordered an Ultra because they wanted an Ultra. They've lived with this device in their head for 5 months. They've watched unboxings. They've planned games that they want to play. They've told their friends and family what they're getting. They've become incredibly excited about it. They might even have picked and bought a case and an SD card. And this is a genuine psychological phenomenon called the Endowment Effect. If you place a pre-order, you feel like you own something already. And because you feel like you own it, you're going to value it more highly, often irrationally. The psychological ownership of something triggers before any physical possession happens. This is why you can order something online and then get very antsy about having it delivered, because in our heads, it's already ours. The endowment effect means that the Ultra is worth far more than its market price, or even a slightly different substitute. And the Ultra wasn't just the best version of the Odin 3, it was the top tier one. Pre-ordering it said something about the kind of buyer that you were. It said that you were serious about the hobby, willing to pay above the odds for something that is cutting edge in Android handheld gaming terms. No matter what AYN do, they can't give you back the version of you that was about to receive the Ultra. That is the most pretentious paragraph I think that I have ever written for this channel, but I do stand by every word of it. But if you look at this dispassionately, AYN have actually done the right thing. They've done about as well as any small company could in a market that is essentially on fire. We're living in the tech version of the film Backdraft, where you can easily open one door which says, I'm buying this unit, and the whole thing just explodes in your face. That's what we're seeing here in real time. So whether you're going to refund or downgrade to a different unit is going to be dependent on what you think about AYN right now. But before you do anything rash, let's just consider the options that you actually have. Ask yourself, if you were able to walk into a shop today with the right money and pick up an AYN Odin 3 Max, would you? And if the answer to this is yes, then you've kind of got your answer straight away, because it sounds like you were going to spend your money on an Odin 3 shaped device no matter what, which isn't a bad position to take at all. If, however, you're unsure, then maybe the better idea is to actually take that refund. The fact is that $500 stopped feeling like savings when you spent it. It became money that was earmarked for a handheld. When AYN refunded it, your brain will probably still want to spend it on a handheld, even if buying one today doesn't actually serve any purpose. Swapping to the Max is the path of least resistance because it absorbs that money straight back into the original shaped destination. But it doesn't always make sense. It's the financial equivalent of going into the kitchen and eating whatever is on the counter. But the most powerful thing that you might actually do might be the hardest thing to do as well, and that's to wait for 6 weeks. Do absolutely nothing with this money and then decide what the best thing to spend it on would be. Because the fact is, the Odin 3 Ultra was starting to get into Windows gaming handheld territory anyway. You could go out, add a little bit of money to this, and buy the ROG Xbox Ally, the base model. And you would have had a better time playing PC games, and you probably would have had a fairly good time emulating on it as well. And there's one thing that I haven't touched on yet, and that's the UFS debate. Now, I've talked about this in previous videos and in comment sections, but I wanted to mention it very briefly before closing because I think this is really important. The difference between UFS 3.1 and 4.0 in real-world terms is pretty negligible. Think about it like this. The Retroid Pocket 6 has UFS 3.1. Have you seen anybody complaining that the Retroid Pocket 6's storage is too slow? No, you haven't. Even if AYN don't or can't fulfill UFS 4.0 for everybody in this situation right now, and I do have many reservations as to whether this was a rogue email or actually company policy, UFS 3.1 is going to be perfectly fine for you. So what should your decision be? If you open this email up and then you just thought, okay, it's a kick in the teeth, but I'll get the Max version anyway, then the Max version is probably the thing you should do, because clearly there's something about the Odin itself, about that infrastructure, about emulating on Android that you love. You were going to get an Odin regardless. You'll be getting it for a bit of a discount, and you're going to get a refund that right now might be best spent on an SD card anyway. But what if you're on the fence? What if every time you think, I'll take the Max, there's a little voice inside your head going, yeah, but it's not the Ultra? And what about if every time you think, I'll take the refund, there's another voice that's saying, well, what will I actually buy with this? And then again, there's this endowment effect that's doing its best work right now, because you're trying to make a rational choice while subconsciously holding on to a device that no longer exists. It's like trying to parallel park a car that somebody's already towed away. So the goal needs to be separating your feelings of loss from the decision of what to spend the money on, because they're two completely different things. But right now they're glued together because for months your brain has treated the Odin 3 Ultra as a solved problem. When AYN uncheck your mental box, they didn't just take away a product, they reintroduced a decision that you thought was already fixed. And humans hate opening finished decisions because it feels like we're going backwards. It feels like a waste. But actually, this isn't a waste. The waste would be letting the 5-month-old version of you, the one who was excited in November, make a $500 decision for the person that you are today. So here's what I suggest, and I'm sorry there's been no jokes in this bit. Take the refund. Let the money land back in your bank account. Don't immediately go shopping for a replacement. Let that dust settle a bit. Because what you're experiencing right now is what a behavioral economist would call a reference dependence. Your baseline is the Ultra, so everything feels like a downgrade from the Ultra, even if it's genuinely a great decision. The Max isn't a downgrade in practice. It's a downgrade only when you measure it against something that doesn't exist. And after 6 weeks, that ghost of machine is going to get quieter. And then you can ask yourself a much cleaner question. I've got $500 right now and no pre-order history. Do I actually want to buy a handheld? And if so, which one? And if the answer is still the Odin 3 Max, then brilliant, you have found the one. And if the answer is something else, then that's equally brilliant as well, because you've prevented yourself from making a compromise purchase just to soothe a disappointment that time would have soothed for free. You know what? I know that waiting 6 weeks sounds like the advice of a parent, the one that you might give to a child, the one that as an adult you think, yeah, I don't want to follow that sort of advice. But there's a reason that that advice exists, because the half-life of a cancelled pre-order is actually very, very short. It feels like a crisis right now, but in a couple of weeks, it's going to feel like a narrow escape, or a mild irritation. So don't make that crisis decision with non-crisis money. Let that ghost fade away. Unless, of course, you're one of the people who's already burning a wicker Odin 3, in which case carry on, but maybe don't set fire to it because we're going for closure here, not arson. That's what I think anyway, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you been caught up in this? Are you going to keep an Odin 3 pre-order? Is yours already on the way? Were you a lucky one? Are you going to go with something else? Maybe something like the ROG Xbox Ally? I would love to know what you think, but that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I know this has been a little bit light on jokes, but I only get a certain quota of jokes for each week, and I've already eaten them up with the MIU Mini Plus review. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching. Do come and join me next time that we step into the retro gaming corner. And until then, I think that's this video with no mistakes. I genuinely don't do that most of the time, so I'm quite happy with myself right now. Happy gaming.